Welcome to the Climate Champions. I'm Lee Krevat, and my guest today is Dr. Mani Vadari, President of Modern Grid Solutions. Mani, welcome to the Climate Champions.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me here.
I remember when I first met you and we talked, it was at a dinner with the Gridwise Alliance.
It was.
If I were to guess, I'd say 2011.
Yep, about that time.
Yeah. You were very impressive, by the way.
Thank you.
I think you were with Battelle. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was with Battelle and working with 7 of DOE's largest national labs those days.
But back then, the Gridwise Alliance wasn't completely focused on climate change and that issue. I think they are a lot more now. What was it that motivated you? What was your motivating moment to get engaged in the climate change mitigation fight?
It's a interesting question. So I started looking at climate change not as much from the original term that used to be called global warming and all that stuff. I started looking at climate change as the impact of all of these decisions we are making in the extreme weather events. There are more of those. They are very much larger in their impact to the conditions around us as well as to the people, and specifically to the utility industry that I serve in. Also huge impact to things like outages of power and things like that. So it was more the cause and effect situation that I was looking at. And when the cause was something this dramatic or this drastic, it needed some dramatic steps also to be fixed. So that's kind of when I started with all of these things. I would say mid 2005, 2006, that time frame.
I think for me in 2003, one of the big moments for me was when San Diego Gas and Electric faced its first once in a 100-year fire, which then, of course, followed in 2007 by another 1 in a 100-year fire. And if it weren't for all the technology we put in place, I think there would be a lot more.
Exactly. And that's the point, right? When this once in a 100-year storm is coming every 2 years, that's a signal that we should not be ignoring. That's a signal that we should take very seriously, because like I said, they're coming more often, they're coming with greater intensity, they're coming impacting more, and you cannot just depend on technology to save you every time.
What are your personal drivers now for focusing on this issue?
My personal driver is really about creating a world for our children. I have 2 children, and I don't want to create a world or leave a world for them that is either unlivable or very difficult to live in. And so that is my personal motivation, because I'll be here for the next maybe 20, 30, 40 years, and then I'm gone. What comes after? And I think that's a huge motivation, because that's kind of when you start thinking of your legacy. What legacy have I left? What legacy have we as a people of the world have left for the people who are coming after us?
It's interesting that you talk about something so far in the future as a personal driver now. I think a lot of people have a problem being driven by something that's so far in advance. So many people are being driven by what they could see today.
Yep. And I take that very seriously, because, my own personal story, I came to this country 42 years ago with $10 in my hand. And I think somewhere along the way, things have worked out reasonably well. So I think at the same way, I want to be able to create that same opportunity for others who are coming after us. So I take that very seriously because of how it impacted me.
Not to get off of the climate change issue, but there are a lot of people that have the attitude, hey, I made it. Others don't have to make it now.
Yeah. I want to make it easier for them. I don't need them to go through the same problems or troubles I did.
What do you and what does Modern Grid Solutions do to help mitigate climate change? And in general?
Yeah, so what we do is amongst many things, we look at all of these problems from a very strategic perspective. And let me kind of take you down that path on that. One of the biggest things we do is we create what is called a journey map. A journey map is an interesting one, and it is also different from a road map that every utility creates. There's 500,000 of those sitting around the world somewhere in some bookshelves gathering dust. A journey map says that I'm going to be looking at the next 5, 10, 15, 20, and 20 plus years. What are the signposts I should be looking at to be able to determine that if the signpost happens, I need to be able to pivot? So I help utilities decide what they should be doing, how often, at what scale, and what problems. And the primary problem that we are seeing everywhere else now is as renewable sources of energy are coming in, and more of them are coming in. And again, some of them are small, like a rooftop solar and so on. Some of them are very large with wind farms and solar farms and storage farms and so on. So we help utilities try to figure out how do you bring all them into your portfolio? How do you dispatch them? Because fundamental to your utility industry is that ability to dispatch generation. Because load is not controlled. Most utilities, if not all, are what we call load following entities. So if you take that approach, I need to be able to control my generation to follow that load. But we all know that when solar is in, when wind is in, it only generates when there is power, when there is wind, or when there is sun. So how do you bring them all together to still deliver reliable electricity to the customer? So that's kind of the big picture questions that we try to solve for our clients.
We talked a little bit about your past coming to this country and also a previous job that you had. Can you lay it all out for us, your background?
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually always introduce myself as a hardcore power system engineer, undergraduate, masters, all the way in the power systems field. Started the first 10 years of my life developing real-time systems that control the flow of electricity in the grid. Then went into consulting where I was helping kind of utilities and associated related industries solve some of the bigger problems like how do you transform the business of system operations, moved on to smart grid, moved on to some of those bigger problems. And after my 3 year, 4 year stint at Battelle, when I started Modern Grid Solutions, I said, you know what, we have to change how we do things. So as I was talking about those signposts, I needed to create some signposts for myself. And the first pivot we did was we wanted to be able to solve some of the bigger problems that most engineers of my kind who understand how power actually flows don't actually focus on as much. So that's kind of been my journey. And to be clear, it's been a lot of journey of discovery, some level of introspection, and more importantly, trying to decide how whatever I'm doing, how does it actually make a difference in the industry?
What do you consider your biggest successes in that regard?
My biggest success is, I think, really moving the dial on what I call DER dispatch or renewable dispatch. I'm coining a new term, and you'll find it amusing because you've been in the energy industry, the electric utility industry longer than I have. You'll find it fascinating because I'm coining a new term called renewable aware operations. So implementing that, I suspect will be my, if not will be, I hope it becomes my achievement because I believe that when renewables come into the grid, and they are at different levels, under different market conditions, all of those things, when they come in, everything a utility does will have to change. Work management has to change, asset management has to change, operations has to change, customer service, customer relationship has to change. So if you do that, this is probably that ultimate transformation of the electric utility that I believe will change how we do things. And as we are looking at that future, kind of help portend what the future actually looks like.
I'm thinking to myself as I hear you talk about this, it's going to be quite a challenge to have utilities change in such a dramatic way.
I think utilities want to change. I again, being a hardcore power system engineer, my perspective always has been, especially when I talk to the people working in utilities, and those are the people I interact with on a day-to-day basis, they all want to do the right thing. They all want to make sure that they're being responsive to their customers' needs. The person working in the field fixing an outage wants to bring that outage, wants to solve that outage as fast as possible so that the customers can get their power back. However, I think putting all of this responsibility on the utility is inadequate. I think the regulator plays a role, the government plays a role, the customer also plays a role. So I think it will only work if we bring them all into a single ecosystem, working in a partnerial manner and not in an adversarial manner.
Do you have thoughts about how to make that happen?
Oh boy. I
I knew
think,
that was a tricky one.
no, and a very good one. I think it is equal parts education. I think it's equal parts helping the other understand. The old story, I would know a person much better if I walked a mile in their shoes. You go down that path, and the old story says, I want the customer to walk a path in the utility shoes. I want the utility to walk a mile in the customer's shoes. I want the regulator to walk a mile in the utilities and the customer shoes. And somewhere along here, when I say customers, it goes all the way from the residential customer to the new types of customers that are coming in with large data centers and huge amounts of loads. And one piece of that education actually is a monthly blog that I write, appropriately titled What's on Mani's Mind. And the what is, of course, spelled with a WATT. Given that I'm a power system engineer, I figured that was appropriate. So, this blog, I try to address key questions like this on a monthly basis because it then allows me to actually help push that message saying there's a broader education here. I want to talk to the data center people and say, don't just come to me and tell me I want 2000 megawatts or 1000 megawatts of capacity next year. Work with me, give me a plan so that we can work on it together. Because if you want it, the utility knows how to get it.
You talked about making it easier for people now trying to make a life here in this country easier. Can you talk about some of the setbacks that you personally had?
When you first come in and you go through the whole process of settling in, there is a lot of learning going on, right? The setbacks are not like big setbacks. There are small setbacks that occur over a period of time that you learn how to learn from, educate yourself, educate the people around you, because the whole idea of who we are as a country is really all about it's the sum which is greater than the whole which is greater than the sum of the parts. And I think that education process, I hate to say this, but probably took 25 to 30 years of my life. Because it takes some time, because you really need to be confident in yourself as much as being able to explain to somebody saying, I think differently, and we don't have to do exactly what I think, but I think we get all of our ideas together, the answer is going to be much better.
Talking about the answer and all of us getting there together, when you look ahead 10, 20, 30 years, what do you think the world looks like from a climate change perspective?
I'm an optimist. So I think we got to set that aside and, sorry, make it front and center. So the optimist that I am, I believe may not be 20 years, but in 30 years and beyond, I believe the energy equation will be solved. I believe of course, under the right political and regulatory environments worldwide, right? Because this is not a US problem. Climate change is not an American problem. It's not a Canadian problem. It's a worldwide problem. But with the right kinds of technologies, whether it is nuclear, whether it is hydro, solar, storage, wind, all of these things, I believe that we will, again, the optimist in me tells me that we will reverse the impacts of climate change. And I'm not going to say we will solve climate change, but at least we will start moving in the right direction. Also believe that by then, coal and natural gas will be completely phased out. Anything that is greenhouse gas forming, emitting will be completely phased out because I think that's the right direction to go. Even if you take a small example in the middle, right? Even if I take the EV credits out, the number of electric vehicles in the marketplace are going to go up.
I recently read that it takes 4 to 7 years to build a new coal or natural gas plant, whereas, of course, we know wind and solar go up much, much quicker.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about retiring coal and natural gas and GHG emitting generation sources. So it seems like a pretty bad business decision, even if right now, politically, it looks like there's support for it to invest in those technologies, because if they're going away and they take a long time to build, you might spend a lot without a lot of revenue to see for it.
That's a great question. So I think we need to stay in that mix of generation and slowly pull things out when they become either less viable, more expensive, whatever be it, right? How you go down that path. And that's the reason why I put a little bit of all of the above into that equation. I think over time, will coal go away completely? Not if we have carbon capture and sequestration, right? So we will have some ability to remember the objective is not coal is bad. The objective is that the greenhouse gas emitting features of coal is bad. Just like that with natural gas, right? I think natural gas will slowly move from natural gas to renewable natural gas or RNG, as we call it, and then possibly over time to hydrogen. So it's like, I think we still need dispatchable sources of generation. We cannot have a situation where it's night, it's dark, solar farms are dead. Well, let's close all the lights and go to sleep. We can't have that. So we do need dispatchable sources of generation. We do need storage. We need a little bit of all of the above in our mix so that we are able to still deliver power. And somewhere along the way, cost also has to be considered because, we cannot take our situation of the financial status and just assume that everybody else can afford it as well.
About 10 years ago, I bought a couple of websites that I still own, dispatchablesolar.com and
Yeah.
dispatchablerenewables.com, because I thought that really ultimately has to be the answer, where those technologies, whether it's by using energy storage or combined with other things, but that has to be dispatchable.
Yes. And you're seeing some of that, right? More and more is solar plus storage, wind plus storage. You do see more and more of them coming. However, I firmly believe that the storage technology of the future has not been invented yet. I firmly believe that we need, just like I talked about different forms of generation, we need different forms of storage. We need short duration storage, extremely short duration of storage to provide regulation support, medium duration storage, and long duration storage. And I believe that viable, cost-effective form of that storage of the future has not been invented yet.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's one of the big gaps we have. Even though it's getting better, we need transformation in energy storage. And Some companies have promised that, but I haven't seen them deliver yet.
But again, the optimist in me tells me that, where there is a where there is a business opportunity, it will happen.
What advice do you have for people that want to help mitigate climate change?
Let me start with the electrical engineer in me, right? This is my story. In the 18th and 19th century, it was all about the Industrial Revolution. We had big machines, steam, coal everywhere. 20th century came in, then it was planes, trains, and automobiles. Then we had computers. Then we had internet. The next 50 to 100 years belongs to me, the power system engineer. I own it. We own it. And the reason is because we are at the core of delivering energy to our customers that is required by everybody. Data centers require energy, houses require energy, industries require energy, and all of them, right? But if you take that one step further, we have the responsibility to deliver clean energy, reliable energy, and in a way that we have the greatest impact. And if we are able to deliver the right amount of electricity to everybody, gasoline powered cars, trucks, all will go away. Planes will figure out how to get there without using expensive gas, airplane fuel. So I think we, the power system engineer, sits at the middle of all of that stuff. So turn that back into what advice would I have? Everybody was talking about 5 years ago, it was the software industry. My daughter went there, right? 5 years ago. Now, with AI coming in, is that still a viable place? I think the next 20 years, and I would call it 50 because I'm the optimist, belongs to the power system engineer. Climate change, uh, and I use the word enabler in terms of saying how can we solve that kind of climate change problem. I think this is going to be the most exciting place. And little more explanation on why, because AI is coming in, we can take advantage of that. Cloud computing is coming in, we'll take advantage of that. Communications improvements are coming in, becoming faster, better, cheaper, we take advantage of that. Edge computing is coming in, we know how to take advantage of that. So if you go down this path, you start seeing that it's almost as if all of those technologies were growing just to make my life easier.
Well, one thing I'm going to challenge you just on one.
Okay.
Sometimes when I break apart the different roles in a utility, it seems that the combination of AI and robotics can replace a lot of that industry, similar to what we're seeing right now with coding.
So I think the answer is, especially when you go to AI and robotics and places like that, I think that's a good thing for us. Let's say there is a huge storm or wildfire. I can send those robots into locations that I do not want to send human beings into. Damage assessment. Using drones, I can take aerial pictures and do an image processing on them to do damage assessment. So pretty much everything you just said further enhance the comment I made 2 minutes ago, which is I want to take advantage of all of these technologies to make life easier, better, cheaper for the average customer, and all while moving us closer towards enhancing climate change impacts.
Boston Dynamics has these robot dogs that they've shown at Distributech the last few
Exactly.
years. I did an article on one on LinkedIn, and these robot dogs are already making a difference. They're already going in where you wouldn't want to send a human being.
Exactly. And they are fully censored so that they're bringing you other information that possibly a human being could not get you access to. Temperature, all of like light conditions, wind conditions, all of those sensors are built in and they're able to get you the data in addition to video and sound and all of those things. So I think whether it is a robotic dog from Boston Dynamics or something else. I just think that going back to my previous comment, they're all working very hard to make life easier for me.
Do you have any questions for me?
I actually do. So I was thinking this morning, one of the concerns I have is one of the questions you put to me, and I'll put it back to you, but I have a different question to you to start with. The question number one that I have is, how do you help people understand that, the lay person in the industry, as you walk down the street, will tell you, well, you know what, the utility is just being obstructionist. They don't want to convert everything to renewable energy without understanding that there are other issues with renewable energy, like when the sun goes down or the wind doesn't blow, or more importantly, we have 6 days of clouded cover as we do in the Pacific Northwest. How do you help them understand that the utility is not saying no, but the utility still has that fundamental requirement or the need to give you reliable power 24 hours a day? And at the same time, then the next question that gets thrown to me is, well, storage is available. So the whole concept of how do you balance renewable energy, climate change, affordability, reliability, and all of these things, how do you get that message out? I'm working hard at it, but I don't think I've succeeded. I'm surrounded by Microsoft people here, and they all think that we don't know how to solve our problems.
That's a fun question for me to answer. I don't think I could go into detail that you would like me to go into, but when I worked at the utility, I was spearheading initiatives to help integrate renewables. I believe in it so much. I still do. I think it's so important for this world that that happen. So I took it upon myself to go out into the world and talk about what I was doing. I was on the road a lot when I worked for SDG&E,
I
sometimes
remember.
other countries, yeah. And I got those kind of questions. And I had to explain about the things you just talked about.
Yeah,
That, listen, the cloud comes in and you have a lot of solar. That's a lot of energy you suddenly don't have. And that affects this balance that we need between what's being used and what's being generated. And you get a blink. And if you get enough blinks, you get computers that fail.
yeah,
And so controlling all that is extremely important. And I had people at conferences challenge me, and then I showed them data. I showed them graphs where we had measured what happens, and it blew people away. They never considered that those were issues, that when the sun doesn't shine, you still need all that generation, especially if you're going to charge electric vehicles at night and you have no sun at night, then you have to have some way of making that energy. Now, I have answers to that. I still believe the answer is renewable energy.
absolutely.
But even though that's the answer, it isn't super easy. Wave one was easy. Wave one, when you had less than 10, less than 20%, you can just hook up solar. It didn't affect anything. But when you're talking big numbers, talk to Hawaii, that can take and does take their grid down because it is
Yeah,
a very difficult situation to manage. And for me, the way that I convey information is with data and with
absolutely.
graphs. And that doesn't work for everybody. I try to make the graphs very easy to understand, but that is how I do it, did it, and will do it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. And that's one that I have always struggled with because I think most of the people who ask you these questions are extremely intelligent. So it's not like they are not intelligent, but how do you turn that around and explain it? Uh, I like the way you put it, and that's generally the way I go with also in terms of explaining them how the system needs to be balanced all the time and so on. But it's always a tough place to be because how do you actually explain these things to them and get them convinced, right? Explaining is one. How do you convince them is the next piece to be able to say, yes, it is coming. In fact, I generally give them a little bit more confidence in saying, yes, it will come. It takes time, and we have to move slowly and steadily. And I also still believe that some of the utilities that may have prematurely shut down their coal-fired generation are probably regretting it right now because it was very important for them to, at that point in time, I think, make kind of like a political statement. Whereas then they're finding that their costs are going up and or they're not quite able to balance the grid as effectively as you need. And then you suddenly get, 4 days of 17-degree temperature the day before Christmas, and all wind stops. Now you're suddenly cranking every piece of generator out there, you're cranking every natural gas generation out there, and there's not enough natural gas in the pipeline to go around to support everybody.
I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm not a big believer of let's rush to 100% GHG free energy. I definitely want to get there. But I just think that instead of getting there in one location where you are really leaning on your neighbors when you do that, we should be just trying to get to 30, 40, 50%, which is very manageable and
Yes.
inexpensive. It's inexpensive to do that. Get that everywhere. And
Yes.
then start moving into higher levels, hoping that technology catches up with us and it won't be as expensive to go higher towards 80, 90, and eventually 100. But right now you're just saying, let's chase a number instead of let's do what makes sense based on science and based on the
Yes,
data.
exactly, exactly. And affordability and reliability, all of those things that still play a part in all of this. And I'm seeing very interesting solutions coming from different parts of the world. Um, about 3, 4, 5 years ago, around slightly pre-COVID time, I was involved in a project in Africa. Lots of sunlight there, 330 odd days of sunlight there per year. The thought was, do we build an entire grid just like the Western systems and Asian
Don't
systems?
do it. Don't do it.
Exactly, exactly. So we started designing kind of a very simple, small per hut per building, four solar panels, a small battery, a small inverter, and an edge device. And we had literally created the concept of a virtual utility, which means that each house was independent. So phase one was each house is independent. The community center was slightly larger, so it would have like 25 panels, but you are able to charge your cell phone, which is amazing because a country like Africa has probably more cell phone. Let me rephrase that: more sophisticated cell phone users than we do. All payments are on cell phones, all of those things. So you go down that path. That was an amazing idea. So I was there until the first 200 home pilot was getting done. And then I pulled out because that's not something that I can support on an ongoing basis. But designing that stuff was probably one of the most fulfilling things because, to your point, don't repeat our mistakes. And we have seen benefits where other countries who have gone leapfrog landline, gone straight to cellular. This is a similar concept, right? Leapfrog transmission lines, distribution lines everywhere to completely distributed, disaggregated utility.
Federated network of microgrids. And that
You
doesn't
got
mean
it.
it's always 100% renewables, but make it so that you can plug in a renewable or a battery to replace
You
something
got
that
it.
today might generate emissions.
Exactly, exactly. And in this particular case, it was all renewable, all solar with some storage, only because, again, their expectations, because there had been no transmission lines or distribution lines to these places. And we had identified almost 50 to 100 million people who could get almost immediate benefits with something like this.
Absolutely. Hey, is there anything else that you want to say?
I will come back and make the same comment I made about 10, 15 minutes ago, right? I think the next 30, 40, 50 years are going to be the most exciting time for us. We will solve problems that, to be honest, I don't think we even know existed. We will solve problems using existing technologies, using existing innovations around us. So I'm extremely optimistic of where our future is leading us. I believe we will get clean energy. I will get affordable energy, reliable energy, and in about 20 years plus, we will start seeing a reversing of climate change impacts.
I really hope you're right. And on that very positive note, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to wrap it up with a wrap. Utilities have strategic plans. The dust they do trap. And that's why instead you work on a journey map. You find that your own life is quite pleasing. So that's why you want to focus for others on challenge easing. The technique that you seem to talk about most was how important it is to review every signpost. The biggest job of all utility innovations is to focus on renewable aware operations. The most effective technique to work together that people can use is to walk a mile in each other's shoes. If people
Love
feel
it.
like they want to help with climate change, but they're feeling futility, you think they should become an engineer at a utility. This conversation was great, quite uncanny. Thank you very much, Nanny.
Thank you. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I will try to take you up on your rap because you hit all the high points of the journey map and signposts and everything that I said. So I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You clearly have talents in new areas, which I knew some about as following on your Facebook posts and things like that. But this is fantastic.